One of the things about owning Shopsmith tools is the complaint that, gosh, you're stuck with proprietary accessories. And over the years, I've commented how, well, that's not exactly true. I mean, you can buy face plates and lathe chucks and even saw arbors from third-party manufacturers as well as from Shopsmith that allows you to use other accessories from other manufacturers. So if you're in love with a one-way lathe chuck, you can run it on your Shopsmith. The one frustration for me, though, was there wasn't an inexpensive, decent quality keyless chuck available. The chucks that we use on Shopsmith tools are either a Jacob chuck or styled like a Jacob's chuck. And what makes them different is the hole in the back has to be 5/8 inch in diameter, and there's got to be a set screw in the proper position and at the correct angle to use on the tapered flat that's on the end of the spindle. Um, Not a big problem. I mean, those chucks are readily available, either directly from Shopsmith or over the years they changed their supplier to some Asian supplier. I think they're made in Taiwan now, and they're decent quality, so not a big deal. But the problem is they weren't keyless. A few years back, I started noticing the a knockoff of a well-made German chuck. Now, the German keyless chuck is about $500, well out of my range. But these are coming in less than $50. And the problem is they've got the wrong size hole in the back. Now, what do I mean by that? Most chucks are made with a hole in the back that's designed to accept one version or another of a Jacob's taper. This is a really weird one. This is a number one Morse taper, Morse also being a size and shape of taper, that transitions to a Jacob's taper. This is the shape that the Jacobs introduced for their chucks. Here I got another on the other extreme. This Jacobs taper on this end is smaller than the Jacobs taper on this one, but the Morse taper on this end is larger than the Morse taper on this end. This is a number one Morse taper. This is from my grandkids' lathe. This is a number two Morse taper. This is common on the Shopsmith tailstock and a lot of lathe tailstocks. Like I said, what's weird about this is the Jacobs taper is small. So for example, this chuck that I have on this number one Morse taper is designed for a Jacobs taper JT6. And you can see the size of that hole. It's a great fit. If I try to take this smaller taper here and stick it in, obviously it's loosey-goosey. It's not going to work. This smaller chuck is designed to work with that taper. Regardless of the Jacobs taper on here, I can't use it on my Shopsmith without some kind of adapter that hasn't been made available commercially. Fast forward to recent years, Shopsmith themselves have offered a chuck like this with an adapter. And my problem with this is while it works, it adds additional length to the chuck. And there's even some third-party folks that are making adapters and selling them together with the chuck, not yet making them available as separate accessories, which is what I was shooting for. So I reached out to my buddy, Chad. Now, you may not know Chad Nevels, but if you've ever seen the introduction to the end credits of my video, you've seen Chad's name because Chad was the very first sponsor of my channel. He followed me on from the YouTube channel membership to Patreon membership, and now he's over on my channel or my website as well. And he's a machinist. And I said, Chad, tell me there's a way of taking this J33 or JT30, Jacobs taper, size 33, chuck, and making it fit my 5/8 inch shaft. Because I know that the largest diameter on that JT33 is ever so slightly larger than the 5/8 diameter that I need for my spindle. And I theorized that this could be modified. It could be bored out, machined in order to fit on the end of my Shopsmith. So I had one of these chucks sent to Chad, and this is basically as he received it. And you can see that it's got a knurled ring that allows you to grip this while you rotate the knurled body on the chuck in order to open or close the jaws. This one, I forget the smallest size it'll hold, but just about down to nothing. Look at how tight that is. And it'll open up to, is this printed on here? Oh, it says from from 1/64 of an inch up to 5/8 of an inch, which is a fantastic range. So Chad took this, and first off, he had to figure out how to make this work. So this knurled ring comes off with a set screw, and of course, being made somewhere overseas, this is going to be metric, and it was, and that collar comes off. Chad then realized he had very little to grip on this. His first thought was he could actually use the jaws of the chuck, grip some kind of a spigot, and then do the machining or the boring into the bottom. But he found that it wasn't running true. And so he ended up taking the whole thing apart and gripping it in his metal lathe, and he bored this out. Now, additionally, he had to drill and tap this hole. And this is the reason why that collar had to come off, because we got to have the proper hole. Oh, it's not that hole, that's a dimple. Here it is, over on this side. And he bored that out to work with the standard set screw that we use to attach things onto the Shopsmith. Now, here's an interesting thing. The angle that that hole is drilled and that the tap is tapping is not 90 degrees to the spindle. Instead, it is a slight angle, and that allows it to interact perfectly with the tapered flat on the end of the spindle here. And what is that angle? This is crazy. It's 3 degrees, 11 minutes. Now, I don't remember this from school. I'm sure I learned it, but I learned it from Google. Is for every degree of angle that we have on, say, a protractor or anything that would divide degrees, between each degree, so between 5 and 6 degrees, there are 60 minutes. And so a 3 degree, 11-minute angle is, to me, a very odd angle, but thankfully it's something that Chad was able to pull off. So that hole's been drilled and tapped, and here's the set screw for it. And we are going to try this on the end of my Shopsmith and see how it works. I promised Chad I wouldn't do this on video. I'm doing it on video. You know, he's concerned that something ain't right, and he doesn't want that to be seen. You know what? If something ain't right, we're not going to see this video, but let's stick it on. If you're watching this, something went right. So here you can see that tapered flat. And again, an example would be like my lathe drive center. This is going to slide up here, and it's going to tighten down onto that flat. Now, it's interesting how these Shopsmith parts, the set screw is way, way out here on that flat. On some of them, it's closer to this knurled ring on others. But we tighten that down, and you can see that it's going to lock that in place. So let's try this with this chuck. Should slide on, and it does. And tighten down, usually give it a little bit of a wiggle, and there we go. Now, one interesting thing about this style of chuck is as you rotate the knurled body of the chuck to reduce or increase the grip, the jaws rotate with it. That's not the way your Jacobs style chuck works. Because the jaws are spinning, if this bit were to begin to rotate, it actually, in effect, is self-tightening, which is kind of interesting. All right, maybe we can make this make more sense in the horizontal boring position. You can see as I can put this onto the end of the spindle, we can tighten that down on the tapered flat. And now I'm going to hold on to the knurled ring here and rotate the knurled body. And I can bring those jaws together, or I can bring them apart. Let's take this all the way out. Again, this says it'll go up to 5/8 of an inch. Easiest or largest bit that I have here handy is, what is that? I think that's a 13 millimeter bit. Fits in just fine. And there we go. That fits very nice. And then we'll loosen that up, pull that out. Let's take it down to the other extreme. I have a 3mm drill bit here. We'll rotate that, bring the jaws together. And there we go, 13 to 3 in just mere seconds. Best thing about this is we don't have this sticking out from the quill an extra inch, inch and a half, however big that adapter is that Shopsmith is using. Now, Chad ran a dial indicator against this and determined that he has this down to 0.003 of an inch of running true, which is perfectly fine for woodworking, and especially considering how inexpensive this is. Let's give it a try. If you don't know, our depth or our throw here on our quill is 4 1/4 inches. We can just touch our drill bit to the stock, I'm burying the tip of the brad point, and we can set the depth. How much further do we want to drill? Let's go in 1/2 inch. And we'll give that a try. Of course, that is pine. Not much of a workout. Let's find something a little bit harder. Here's a piece of cherry scrap. I got yelled at when I used this before and referred to it as that. Yeah, there's no such thing as cherry scrap, but let's give this a go. I see no slippage whatsoever. We're going to try that again without the noise canceling headset and maybe give you the sound of this a little bit better. Got a little anxious there. Nice, nice, and bit comes right out. I mentioned that chuck was under 50 bucks. In fact, it was like around $34. So if you are a machinist or know someone who is a machinist, I will leave a link down in the video description. Got it on Amazon. So if you're a Prime member, of course, shipping is free. If you don't have a friend, you might want to have Chad do this for you. So I'm also going to share with you Chad's contact information. And if you guys want to work something out, you could order the chuck through Amazon and have it delivered to Chad. And he would take it from there and ship it back to you. And you guys can, like I say, work out the details. But what about Shopsmith in this whole deal? I mean, they could do this too. They could buy these chucks from wherever they're being made. Who knows? Maybe the manufacturer could go ahead and modify the chucks for them, or maybe they could have somebody in town do those modifications. I don't mean to cut them out of this, but what I do like about this idea is eliminating that adapter, or they could sell the adapter. Either way, I welcome them jumping on board and figuring out how to do something with this idea. As always, I look forward to your questions, comments, cheap shots. Thank you, Chad, for making my dream come true. We'll do a quick follow-up video after this and from your questions and comments, and we'll see where all this goes. All right, in the meantime, make it a great day.